Thank you, Minister, for joining us here today. We're glad to see you at committee for the first time. For the sake of struggling Canadians who are looking for help, I hope you'll stay for as long as it takes to give us some answers, which you committed to doing, so I thank you for that. You offered people public health advice, which they're already getting from chief medical officers, so I mean, I appreciate that. But what they really need from you is to hear a lot more about a serious, full-scale plan to save their jobs and meet their needs by supporting Canada's energy sector. You said one phone call is a definition of a priority in the list of the comments that you had between the Prime Minister and President-elect Biden. It's been over a month since the Prime Minister made one call on Keystone XL. Is that the last time you took any action to save the project?
No, I think it was just Tuesday that myself and Energy Minister Sonia Savage, the Alberta Energy Minister, and James Rashad, who's the Alberta envoy in Washington, D.C., we have been discussing weekly how we make the case for Keystone and how we make the case for Canada's energy sector in Washington, and how we position Canada with an incoming administration. An administration that looks to be the most sweeping environmentalist administration that the United States has ever seen. So it is crucially important to our energy sector that we get this right. On Tuesday, Mr. Rashad and I appeared together at a summit that was held by the Canadian Embassy in Washington. Had a lot of we consider to be influencers in perhaps a future administration, but also influential people right now in Washington, to make that case, to make the case for Canada's energy, to make the case that Alberta, Saskatchewan, Newfoundland, and Labrador, our oil-producing provinces, are the tops in the world at ESG, that we are lowering emissions considerably, that we have put a price on pollution, that we should be the preferred partner and supplier of oil and natural gas to the United States. And we have taken a Team Canada approach in much the same way as we did with NAFTA. We were doing it together.
Thank you very much, Minister. So part of your Team Canada approach, I'm hoping then, would be to ensure that Keystone XL gets built, because First Nations groups are reaching out. There is the I'm sure you're well aware, the Natural Law Energy Group, which is 5 different First Nations, one of which is in my riding. They have an equity stake now in Keystone XL, so it's extremely important to them. So for the sake of them, I really hope that you will do everything in your power to ensure that this project is completed. I just want to move along here. Do you know how many jobs have been lost in the Canadian energy sector in the last 5 years?
It's been considerable. I would say that one of the things that we have done, particularly with the $1.7 billion that we put forward on orphan and inactive wells, was to make sure that we considerably lessened the number of people that we would lose, because it's not simply about looking after workers, which is actually which is, as I said, their first priority. The other extremely important part is, as I've said, natural resources and our natural resource sector will be pivotal, central to the recovery of this country. We can't afford to lose talented people. We can't afford to lose experienced people in the field or in the corporate offices of our energy companies in Calgary or Edmonton or in St. John's. We don't want to lose these people. So keeping people in place is vitally important. That was a huge priority for us, both with the wage subsidy and also the $1.7 billion that we put forward on orphan and inactive wells.
Okay, so I'm sure you're aware then that Evraz in Regina, they just laid off 600 workers because there is no work, there is no demand for Canadian steel. We've seen LNG projects being prioritized with Chinese steel, not Canadian steel, and that's a huge problem. There's another issue there, and when I'm looking through the line by lines in the supplementary numbers here, I'm wondering, is there any funding through your department to help combat misinformation campaigns and campaigns against Canadian resource industries?
I would say that the initiative that we have taken with the Alberta government to make sure that we are prominent in Washington, D.C. right now, I mean, that is, I'll be honest, that's the audience that concerns me the most, because I want to make sure that our story gets told. And that it gets told well. And I can tell you, Mr. Rashad, and I think Minister Savage would say the same, that the Canadian Embassy in Washington and Ambassador Hillman are completely engaged on this. They understand the importance of it, and they have been working Washington together with Mr. Rashad considerably. I mean, they have been working together hand in glove. We have been, making sure that our story is being told by the people who will make decisions both on Capitol Hill and in an incoming administration that has clearly made the environment and combating climate change a priority. I mean, I read a lot into the fact that John Kerry, former, presidential candidate.
Okay, sorry, Minister, I'm going to cut you off there. I'm sorry. I have one more question I really want to ask you here quickly before my time runs out here. So.
If we can just go quickly here, go ahead, Jeremy.
Yeah, sorry, really quickly here, Minister. So in the $159 million for responsible and renewable resource development, you briefly mentioned carbon capture in your notes here. So I'm just wondering how much of a priority is carbon capture and storage, and how much of that $159 million is going to go towards technologies like carbon capture, which globally need to be part of the solution when reducing emissions?
No question, carbon capture will figure very prominently. It is, when I speak with Minister Savage, it's at the top of the list. We see incredible amounts of potential, because at the end of the day, sir, like, the most important thing is lowering emissions. Regardless of the industry or regardless of where you are in the country, it is about lowering emissions. So carbon capture allows us the opportunity to make sure that those emissions are offset. And the important thing when we talk about net zero is the importance of the word net. Right? It means that there is net zero emissions. So that means carbon capture can play a part in capturing those emissions. We think there's an incredible opportunity there. We also think that there's an incredible opportunity for carbon capture with hydrogen.